Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am Denise Parungaw. My topic for this video is human behavior and coping defense mechanism. This chapter presents the selected factors affecting human behavior such as emotion, conflict, depression, stress, frustration, and coping mechanisms. Segment number 1, emotion. Emotion refers to feelings, affective responses as a result of psychological arousal, thoughts and beliefs, subjective evaluation, and body expression. It is a state characterized by facial expressions, gestures, postures, and subjective feelings. Emotion is associated with mood, temperament, personality, and disposition. The English word emotion is derived from the French word émouvre. This is based on the Latin émouvere, where e variant of x means out and mover means move. The related term motivation is also derived from mover. Theories of emotion. Number 1 by James Lange, theory by William James and Carl Lange. James Lange theory states that emotion results from psychological states triggered by stimuli in the environment. Emotion occurs after psychological reactions. This theory and its derivatives states that a change station leads to a changed bodily state. As James says, the perception of bodily changes as they occur is the emotion. James further claims that we feel sad because we cry, angry because we strike, afraid because we tremble, and neither have we cried, strike, nor tremble because we are sorry, angry, or fearful, as the case may be. The James Lange theory has now been all but abandoned by most scholars. Number 2, Cannon Bird theory by Philip Bird and Walter Cannon. This suggests that people feel emotions first and then act upon them. This is a theory that emotion and psychological reactions occur simultaneously. These actions include change in muscular tension, perspiration, etc. The theory was formulated following the introduction of the James Lange theory of emotion in the late 18th, which alternately suggested that emotion is the result of one's perception of the reaction or bodily change. Example: I see a man outside my window. I am afraid. I begin to perspire. The Cannon-Bird theory of emotion is based on the premise that one reacts to a specific stimulus and experiences the corresponding emotion simultaneously. Cannon and Bird posited that one is able to react to a stimulus only after experiencing the related emotion and experience. 3. Two-factor theory. This theory was provided by Schachter and Singer, in which they posit that emotion is the cognitive interpretation of a psychological response. For many, this remains the best formulation of emotion. Most people consider to be the common sense theory to explain psychological changes. Their physiology changes as a result of their emotion. What is emotional intelligence, or EI? EI is the area of cognitive ability that facilitates interpersonal behavior. The term emotional intelligence was popular popularized in 1995 by psychologist and behavioral science journalist Dr. Daniel Goleman in his book Emotional Intelligence. Dr. Goleman described emotional intelligence as a person's ability to manage his feelings so that those feelings are expressed appropriately and effectively. AI is the capacity to understand and manage emotion. However, the content and boundaries of this contract remain unsettled. Mayer and Solovey, the who originally used the term, defined AI as the ability to perceive emotion, integrate emotion to facilitate thought, understand emotions, and to regulate emotions to promote personal growth. 5 components of emotional intelligence by Goleman. Number 1, self-awareness. A person has a healthy sense of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is they understand their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as how their actions affect others. A person with emotional self-awareness is usually receptive to and able to learn from constructive criticism more than one who doesn't have emotional self-awareness. 2. Self-regulation. A person with a high emotional intelligence has the ability to exercise restraint and control when expressing their emotions. Number 3. Motivation. People with high emotional intelligence are self-motivated, resilient, and driven by an inner ambition rather than being influenced by outside forces, such as money or prestige. 4. Empathy. An empathy person has compassion and is able to connect with other people on an emotional level, helping them respond genuinely to other people's concerns. Number 5. Social skills. People who are emotionally intelligent are able to build trust with other people and are able to quickly gain respect from the people they meet. Emotional intelligence and criminal behavior research base. Number 1. The group of convict offenders obtained significantly lower scores on all the domains of MEII, Mangal, emotional intelligence inventory, such as interpersonal awareness on emotions. Interpersonal awareness are other emotions. Intrapersonal management or own emotions, and interpersonal management or other emotions. An aggregate emotional quotient in comparison to their normal subjects. Starting EI enhancement program in prison can help the inmates better understand their feelings and emotions. Number 2. Emotional intelligence is deeply related to aggression and offending. Number 3. Persons with high EI levels are more able to moderate their emotions and are less impulsive. On the other hand, individuals with low EI levels are more prone to risky behavior. They also have a hard time understanding situations from the perspective of others and therefore tend to be less empathetic. 4. A reduced capacity to regulate emotions could possibly maintain offending patterns of behavior in criminals. For example, internet child sexual abuse is often preceded by unregulated negative feelings. 5. A reduced capacity to regulate anger, desire, and sexual arousal may result in an assault, thief, and a sexual assault respectively. 6. Some recent studies consistently report EI deficits in criminals. In addition, some studies indicate that offenders are deficient in subcomponents of EI such as social problem solving, empathy, social competency, flexibility, impulse control, and self-regard. Segment number 2, conflict. Conflict is a stressful condition that occurs when a person must choose between incompatible or contradictory alternatives. It is a negative emotional state caused by an inability to choose between two or more incompatible goals or impulse. Conflict is the state in which two or more motives cannot be satisfied because they interfere with one another. Types of conflict. Number 1, psychological conflict or internal conflict. Psychological conflict could be going on inside the person no one would know, or instinct may be at odds with values. Freud would say unconscious id battling superego and further claim that our personalities are always in conflict. Number 2, social conflict. The different kinds of social conflict are: A. Interpersonal conflict. B. Two individuals me against you. C. Intergroup struggles or us against them. D. Individual opposing a group. Me against them against me. E. Intergroup conflict. Members of group all against each other on a task. Number 3, approach avoidance. Conflict can be described as having features of approach and avoidance. Approach, avoidance, and approach avoidance. Approach speaks to things that we want, while avoidance refers to things that we don't want. Kinds of approach avoidance. A. Approach conflict. In approach conflict, the individual must choose between two positive goals of approximately equal value. In these two, pleasing things are wanted, but one option should be chosen. Example: choice between two colleges, two roommates, or two ways of spending the summer. B. Avoidance conflict. Avoidance conflict involves more obvious sources of stress. The individual must choose between two or more negative outcomes. Example: study or do the dishes. I don't want this and I don't want that. A woman with an unwanted pregnancy may be morally opposed by abortion. C. Approach avoidance conflict. Approach avoidance conflict exists when there is an attractive and unattractive part to both sides. It arises when obtaining a positive goal necessitates a negative outcome as well. Examples: Gina is beautiful but she is lazy. I want this but I don't want what this entails. Another is the dilemma of the student who is offered a stolen copy of an important final exam. Cheating will bring guilt and reduce self-esteem but also a good grade. D. Multiple approach avoidance conflict. This refers to conflict with complex combinations of approach and avoidance conflicts. It requires the individual to choose between alternatives that contain both positive and negative consequences. Functional versus dysfunctional conflict. A. Dysfunctional conflict. There is dysfunctional conflict if conflict disrupts, hinders job performance, and upsets personal psychological functioning. B. Functional conflict. There is functional conflict. Conflict is responsive and innovative, aiding in creativity and viability. Crime and conflict. Criminal behavior as an indicator of conflict within the person, emphasizing either failure to resolve tensions generated in the course of interaction between the organisms and the human figures in its environment, and B. Tensions generated by person's inability to satisfy the contradictory expectations of others or else to mobilize the resources needed to perform a role assigned to him. That's all, ma'am. Thank you.